That was so beautiful. Thank you. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. Wow. And and what a great message. I am a gift. Let's say that. I am a gift. Now let's say it like we mean it. Ready? I am a gift, and you are a gift. You know, it's just so good to really recognize that and know that about ourselves and claim that you know, everything that has brought us to this point in time, that we truly are a gift. So today we are talking about, well, first let me say tomorrow obviously is Memorial Day, and this has inspired me to talk about life and death and life. And one of the scriptures that I love so much is from Ecclesiastes. To everything there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven, a time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, and a time to pluck up that which is planted, and so on and so on and so on. That's such a beautiful, beautiful scripture. Truly reminds us that, you know, life is about change, and that the biggest change that we have the tendency to resist the most is death. And it's certainly the thing that we kind of shy away from talking about. So I want to first tell you this little joke. There were 3 men that died, and they went to heaven. They were in orientation, and they were asked this one question: that when people come by you in the casket and your friends are mourning over you, what do you hope that they're going to say about you? And the first man, without hesitation, said, you know, I want them to say that I was a great family man and that I was a great doctor and saved a lot of lives. And the second man said, well, I want them to say that I was a fantastic teacher and I made a difference in the lives of the children for tomorrow. And the third guy hesitated for a second, and then he said, I want him to say, look, he's moving. And we clap because we're like, yes, that's what I hope too. But I like that joke for today because you know, as a generality, we tend to resist this idea of death. And in reading some of Long's book, especially in his latest one, Eternal Life, he talks about that everything, you know, like every living creature, that we will do anything we can to hang on to life, you know, until the very last possible second. And the example he uses, if you went into your bathroom at night and there was a cockroach in the sink, which we don't want to vision, but, and you turn the water on, that thing will just do everything it can, you know, to keep living. And it's normal. So it's a normal part of our experience that we do everything we can to resist it. Yet, death is something that all of us are going to experience. You know, we're going to experience either the death of a loved one, or perhaps a loved one who has experienced the death of someone close. We even experience death on a global basis, you know, with war and with natural disasters. But ultimately, my friends, we're all going to make that journey someday ourselves. And so I feel it's very important to have this conversation about this today. One of the scriptures I think that really goes along with this is that in Corinthians, the last enemy to be destroyed is death. And the reason that I like that scripture is because, as we've talked about, an enemy is simply something that opposes our greater good, our greater experience of life. And that as long as we have this idea that we can't really talk about death, or that death is something bad or something negative, then it really is taking away from the greater experience of our life. And so what the intention is today is to open up the conversation and hopefully to make friends with this idea that we call death. Now, I'm going to talk to you about a subject that I have no concrete answers for. So I'm going to share with you what we believe here in Unity. I'm going to share with you some personal experiences, and I'm going to share with you some things that I've read, as well as other things that people have told me. Now, in Unity, when we do a service for somebody who has transcended, we call it a celebration of life. You won't find us calling it a funeral in Unity. It's a celebration of life. Now, I'm going to tell you that without exception, and I have done a lot of celebrations of life for many, many, many years, without exception, I will have people come up to me after a celebration of life and say, "Oh my gosh, I have never been to a service that has been like that has truly celebrated the person that has been happy." And it's so funny because I've been doing it this way for so long that the other way is almost foreign to me. And in fact, sometimes when I go to some of the other ones, it's kind of hard for me to sit there because I'm just like, please just talk about the person, talk about the gifts that their life, of what the gifts were of their life. And that's really what a celebration of life is for us. When I do a celebration of life, I interview the family. I interview the people around this person. And the idea is that whoever comes to a celebration of life, no matter how they knew that person, that they will leave there and they will have an even greater experience of knowing that person than when they walked in there. Now, in a celebration of life, I'm going to share with you some of what I share, just to explain kind of what it is that we believe about death. Because one of the questions that I ask in a celebration of life is, well, what is death? What happens after we lay this physical garment aside? And the answer is that we don't know, but that's where faith comes in. Faith that there is a power greater than ourselves. Faith that we live and move and have our being in this divine mind that is the purity of love, that is the purity of goodness, and that we have all, come forth out of this, and we could never be separate from it. Faith that there is life beyond this physical realm. In the original language of Jesus, which was Aramaic, and I didn't know this until a number of years ago, but the word death literally means not here, present elsewhere. Isn't that interesting? Not here, present elsewhere. And of course, in a way, once that somebody transcends it, we're no longer physically touching them, but we're experiencing them from a different perspective. Reverend Eric Butterworth, the late Reverend Eric Butterworth, if you have not read any of his books, I encourage you to do so. Fantastic Unity minister. He said, in the flowing experience of life, change is a constant reality. In every change, we see evidence of the process of death and rebirth. And in 1 Corinthians, Paul says, I die daily. Now, what I like about that is that when we look at our experience of life, that our whole physical life has been about life, death, life, death, life, death. In a very real way, because we were an infant, and in a sense we died from infancy and we're rebirthed as a toddler. We died from being a toddler and we're rebirthed as an adolescent. So the person that I was 20 years ago, in a very real sense, I died, as that person, and I was rebirthed into the person that I am today. But also when you look at experiences of your life, like probably many people have been through the ending of a relationship, maybe through some type of financial devastation, the loss of a job, the loss of a home, through something like a tornado or something like that. And in a very real way, it's a death experience. But always out of that experience comes this experience of new life. And I can tell you that in some of those personal experiences of my life, it was scary because I couldn't see what was on the other side. I'm getting a divorce, what's on the other side of that? I've lost my job, what's on the other side of that? I've lost my home, what's on the other side of that? And yet, without fail, there's always a resurrection process. There's always something on the other side of it. Always there's something on the other side of it. So when we can relate that our physical life to the experience of death itself, I can promise you there's always going to be something on the other side of this that we call our physical life. Now, another thing that I share in a celebration of life is that nature is one of our greatest teachers, and I think nature is by far one of our greatest teachers. And if we didn't know any better, 2 months ago when we looked out at those trees, we would have been, oh my gosh, the trees have all died. There's no sign of life on those trees. They've died. And yet, the reality is the life has always been in the tree. It just changed form. And now we see, it's a new season now. And it's come forth in even more magnificence. And again, I relate that to the fact that it's the same for us, that we have simply changed form and recognize that everything in a sense is recycled. What we now know is that we are energy. Yes? Energy cannot die. Energy can only be transformed. And so in a very real way, we're recycled. We are. In fact, I saw something the other day on the internet that you could actually buy something that you could put your ashes in, that if you planted it, a tree will grow. Have you seen that? Yeah, kind of cool. So you really would be recycled then. So energy cannot be destroyed, only transformed. Okay, so what is the process of death itself? And not the physical process, because we know that's going to be different for everybody. But I got to thinking about this one day, and I was relating it to the fact that I had the honor on both instances of being there when my grandchildren were born. And what a beautiful experience to actually get to be through that birthing process and get to, actually be there and during that. And I got to thinking with my last one, his name's Declan. And as that process was taking place, I was just, kind of taking time in my mind to just welcome him, to just say, I'm just so excited, for you to come into our experience. And, I know that during this time, the contractions are happening, it's going through this process of moving through. And I'm just, I'm just really in my own heart and mind saying, you have so much love waiting for you here. You are coming into such an incredible environment, into people that just love and adore you. And I got to, all of a sudden I got to thinking how interesting it is that, in a very physical, real sense, he's going through a dark tunnel and coming to the light. Well, I got to thinking about, what do we hear about people who've had near-death experiences? They're going through a tunnel, they always talk about that, and into the light. And I got to thinking that, maybe there are like angels on the other side that are ministering to these little lives as they're coming in saying, it's okay, you can let go now. It's okay, we love you and we're going to be right here for you. And you are going into such an experience of love. And it was like, oh my gosh, death and life, they're two sides of the same coin. Because I really believe it's the same experience. Now, not necessarily that every child that comes forth gets to come into such a loving environment, but, from my perspective, that's what our experience was. And so knowing, that in an even grander way, that's the experience when we die. That there are people here who are doing what? They're ministering to us. And they're saying, I love you, it's okay, you can let go. You can let go because you're moving into such an incredible experience of love, that one that you can never even begin to imagine. One of the quotes that I use sometimes is, when I was born, I cried and the world rejoiced. And when I died, the world cried and I rejoiced. And I just love that because that was very real as to what the experience is. Okay, so what happens then when we die? Reverend Robert Sicking said, at this point in our experience, it is not possible to substantially prove any of the theories that we may put forth, because, as it has been facetiously said, nobody sends postcards from the other side. Darn! If only they could, huh? So here's where I go with this. When I first came into Unity, I came from a background in which death was very negative. We didn't talk about it. And the funerals that I had been to had just been wailing and crying and sad, and it just wasn't a good experience. So I had a not good thought about death and about what would happen after. I get into Unity and I start to have this whole different idea of what life is, what God is, of the eternality of my beingness, of the goodness of my beingness. I finally got past the worry I was going to go any place but into the goodness of God. And I started to read all these books about near-death experiences. Now, there's a lot of books out there on near-death experiences. Almost all of them, not all, but almost all of them without fail, talk about this amazing experience of love that is beyond what they can even begin to explain. that they have when they've stepped out of this body. Dr. Raymond Moody, he's one of the ones that has these books on near-death experiences, said they are permeated and comforted with a sense of love and peace that is beyond description, a feeling of ineffable joy. And I've read this over and over and over again. Our own Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of Unity, in July 5th, 1948, when he was literally getting ready to transcend, and there were many people standing around him, he had this look of euphoria on his face, and he kept saying over and over again, "Don't you see it? Don't you see it? It's glorious. It's glorious." And we've heard people specifically tell us of their experiences with, seeing people that they knew that have transcended. It's there over and over and over again for us. There was a minister who had a congregant that 25 years previously had been crushed by a dump truck and had been technically dead. And he told about how he could see his friends attempting to rescue him and resuscitate him. And in his words, he said he felt like a drop merging together with an ocean of love. Isn't that beautiful? A drop merging together with an ocean of love. He said that never once did he feel like he did not exist, that he simply went from being on the earth plane to being saturated in a feeling of love and of continuing that experience. And I think it's important to recognize that he never felt like he didn't exist. And I think that this part of talking about this today is important for those of us who have had those close to us transcend, because it gives us a sense of peace to know that they're great. Really the pain is for us. I mean, and that's normal. And I do want to say here that it is important to honor that grieving process. It's so important to allow yourself to grieve, to feel it, to work through it if you can with somebody. But our pain is for the loss that we're experiencing. But for them, they're great. They're great. Okay, so what about do they really, when it says, "I never once felt like I didn't exist"? Well, how do we know that? Do we really exist beyond this physical realm? So I'm going to share with you an experience that I had with my dad. Now, my dad passed in 1998. I honestly don't remember the date. Because for me, I've never felt sad on that day. I've never had gotten to that day and just been sad. I just have always looked at it as like a celebration of his rebirth. And so a number of months after my dad passed, my mom, my family of origin lives in Ohio. My mom was staying with me. And I had this dream one night, and the next day I was like, "Mom, I have to tell you about this dream." So in my dream, my mom and I, my mom's about this big, we were arm in arm, we were walking in the hospital, and my dad was there. And what we knew was that my dad was dying. And it was like I could, in my dream, I could feel the heaviness. My dad is dying, and we were so sad. And for some reason, my mom and I had to leave the hospital. And then the next thing, we're walking back into the hospital, and we're really feeling heavy now because we're walking in and we're thinking he may even be gone by the time we get to his room. We turn the corner and we get to his room, and my dad is standing at the doorway. Now, my dad had white hair, always a crew cut. He had beautiful blue eyes. Always his cheeks were just really red. And he would have a tank top and shorts on and a cane. And he was standing there just like that at the door of this hospital room. And no words were spoken, but with everything in my being, he was saying to me, "I'm not dead. I'm not dead. I am alive." So I tell this to my mom, and my mom says, "You have got to call your sister." So I'm like, okay. So I called my sister. It was a week or two before that. My sister had a dream in which she and my dad were flying. Don't you love those dreams when you fly? I just want to fly like that. I love that. But she said they were flying over some big city, and the next thing they flew down into a funeral home. And she said she looked up, and there was a casket, and when she got up there, there was nobody in the casket, but right beside the casket was my dad's recliner, which we called King Richard's throne, because my dad's name was Richard, and he was the only one that sat on that, and my dad was sitting in his throne, and again, no words were spoken, but she knew that he was saying, "I'm not in there. I'm not dead. I'm alive. And there is no doubt, you can think what you want to think, there is no doubt in my mind and heart that that was my dad. Clearly saying, you know, you guys don't grieve me, I'm great. I'm great. And I love too, because haven't you had experiences, if a loved one is transcended, where there's something that is like a signal to you? How many of us have those? Yeah, look around and see that. It's just amazing. And I know there's a certain number that comes up, and for Sean and I, we know, we're always, oh, there's Dad. And it comes at times when I really need that. And then for my other family, it's a toothpick. And if you haven't experienced that yet, you probably will at some point. But there's no doubt to me that we exist beyond this physical realm and that we maintain some sense of our beingness. I love that. Now, one of the things I want to really encourage us to do from this is I want to encourage you to talk about this with your loved ones. This is a hard topic, but I want to encourage you to make some plans with your loved ones, because this is the best gift that you can possibly give them. I have been through experiences where there's been no conversation, and I've been through experiences where we've done a rehearsal for the celebration of life, and I promise you the second is the much better. When people have not talked about it and you are in such grief, it is the hardest thing to try and figure out what to do for a service. And when I say this, I'm saying, let them know. Do you want to be cremated? Do you want to be buried? What do you want done with your ashes? What songs do you like? What do you want your celebration of life to be like? Who would you like to do that? Two of the last ones that I did were just two amazing ones, because it was Sandra Harville and Gail Riggins. And these women went into the experience of dying with such grace. I mean, the most grace I have ever experienced. And they totally had things planned. And Gail had things, like I said, so well planned that we did a rehearsal of her celebration of life at the Gloys Theater. But what was great when the time came? Everything was it went exactly how she wanted it to go. And she wrote what she wanted me to share, and I was able to be the voice, and she shared these beautiful things about what she learned in life. And I think, isn't that what it can be about? That we can truly share our gifts, of what we feel like our life experience has been, by taking time to write these things out, and by stepping into what can sometimes be an uncomfortable situation. But ultimately, a big part of what today is about embracing embracing death so that we can more fully live life. Again, Robert Sicking said, "The purpose of existence is to live, not to prepare for death. It is my firm belief that if we can develop the right kind of attitude toward death and dying, we can turn our attention to the more important matter of living life fully here and now." Elizabeth Lesser, in one of her books, said that she had a friend that was very close to her that died, and she said, whenever he visits me in my dreams, he tells me the same thing: to live my life fully. So, my friends, today is not only about shifting our experience and our thinking about death and making friends with it and knowing our loved ones are doing great, but it's also about embracing it in a sense that we can fully live our lives, that we can get up every day and we can be grateful for this life in this physical body, and that we can enjoy the earth around us, and we can enjoy each other, and that we can take the time to be with each other and to be connected, and to say that we love each other, and to tell each other how much we appreciate each other, and to reach out and to do those things, and just to have fun, just to have a lot of fun. Sean and I, it's so funny because he is like falling asleep up here. But the reason that he's falling asleep up here is because the last 2 days we have had such fun with family that came in out of town. We had like 8 kids at our house, and we had water fun, and all this kind of stuff, and we just embraced every single moment of it and let our house become a total disaster, and who cares, because it was all about embracing life and living it to the fullest. So I just encourage you, my friends, just to truly live while you're alive. Are we all alive today? Yes, we are. Okay. To live while you're alive. And God bless you, and namaste. Thank you.